What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We are going to be doing an updated farmer's guide for your beginner players. If you've been starting to play this game in the last week or two, you've probably seen there's some announcements with Elrond and his legendary event, and you're kind of worrying about if you should be pursuing that. We're going to talk about that and kind of talk about how to handle that event, especially why you probably don't want to go for it as a brand new player. Also talk about why you should be prioritizing your light and shadow campaign teams and focusing those into arena and kind of keeping a narrow focus on your roster. We're going to break that all down in today's video. So if you guys do enjoy this video, you find it helpful or informative, make sure to hit that like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Let's dive right into it. So, Lord Elrond's Legendary event. Now, we don't know for certain what is going to be used for this, but based on how this month has become the month of the elves, we've gotten several characters easier to farm for the elves. Leliel's a little more difficult, but Elrond, Naramiri, and Lomian are all easier to farm. It's all pointing to the fact that we're going to be using elves. There's also been a data mine, but again, data mines are always kind of take them with a grain of salt. But just the way they're behaving with how they're changing up elves and their farmability, it really points that we're going to be using elves to unlock Elrond, which is great, because then that means you're using the same team that you're using with Lord Elrond. Now, of these elves, some of them are good, some of them are ones you really shouldn't be focusing on as a beginner player. And again, I do want to say this is probably not something you want to be focusing on if you're brand new to the game. You're probably saying, well, McMull, legendary characters, they're pretty great for a reason, and I agree. But the issue is right now we don't have a lot of game modes. We are getting Moria raids at some point in Q3, so sometime this summer. But right now, all we've got is Arena. And while Arena is great, and it's a great way to get your premium currency, it's one of those things where resources are so scarce right now. Gear and gold are very hard to come by. So when you have a team like this, and most of these elves are not really good campaign characters, like for instance, Lomian and Elrond here are both incredibly squishy and they'll die easily. You need to make sure you have light side campaign characters that are going to survive and get you those stars. That way you can easily get your gear, your gold, your building materials. You want strong light side campaign characters. And until we get Lord Elrond, these elves are probably not going to be good for that kind of stuff. They'll probably be good with Arena, and well, I'm sure they're going to be great in Moria, but we don't know for sure. And also, unless you're able to farm 10 plus shards a day, you're probably not going to be in a good spot to use these elves for the Lord Rivendell or Lord Elrond event. Plus, not to mention that Leliel's probably not going to be done in time for you, and which means you're probably going to have to wail on Elodin. So unless you're spending a lot of money, this is probably out of reach for a brand new player. And, you know, don't stress out about that. Again, not a lot of game modes, but if you are going to be focusing on elves, if you want to get some of these elves going, a couple that I can recommend you do use for your light side campaign are going to be Arwen and Naramiri. Lomian and Elrond here are both squishy, and they're really not good for campaign. Leliel is like mid farming, like she's chapter 3 shadow. It's gonna be a while before you can start farming her. So there's better things to be using, or better things to be farming in the meantime. Naramiri is gonna be a solid healer for you. Usually I recommended that people use Pippin as your early game healer for light. Naramiri is chapter 2-1 of your guild campaign. Not hard to get her. She'll fill in for you. She's got some decent healing. She's not as good as Pippin, but she'll do the job until you get Halbrand unlocked for the challenge store. So, you know, use a couple of them here. What are some other options? Well, you get Strider early on in the game, and Strider's great. Really good damage, and especially if you're going to be throwing out Banes on the enemy team, he's going to hit them hard with his basic. Lady Eowyn is given to you right away as well. Fantastic character, one of the better characters in the game. She gives might to your whole team. She can dispel and apply ability block to your opponents. She can remove. Sorry, when I say dispel, she can remove negative effects from your team. Eothane is a solid tank, but I've stopped using him. He kind of falls off And also Éomer. Éomer, Eothane, and Éowyn are a really solid trio for early game. Really, really good. Éomer, you get through quests. Eothane, you automatically unlock him the first time you complete his hard mission, which is 2-1 light campaign. Or sorry, 1-1. First time you do it, you get him automatically unlocked. Fantastic. So that gets you a solid trio to kind of build your team around. You get Strider, and then you get Naramiri. Now, if you have been doing the marquee events and you do get Arwen unlocked, that's great. You can actually use Arwen in this, and you can swap out, like, say, Eothane and bring in Arwen instead. And side note, there will be an in-depth review of Arwen this week. She is really, really good. Yeah, there's been a bunch of people in my guild, we've been talking about it. Some of us are kind of mid on her, but others have kind of shown me the light with her, and I've got a much better opinion of her of late. So moving on from there with your light campaign, you're going to eventually get to Halbrand, and Halbrand is through the challenge store tokens. And this is also something else where why you probably don't want to go for Pippin and why Naramiri is better is because of challenges. Now, your challenge store is going to give you Bolg or Halbrand, and Halbrand all day. Bolg is great, but there's better shadow leads, and the Misty Mountain team's just not a really good campaign team to be using. So dump all of your tokens into Halbrand. Halbrand is top of the line, one of the best characters in the game. Really good tank. His heal is amazing. He is, yeah. It's once I started like really getting him powered up, it's been incredible what I've been able to use with him. But also, in addition to the campaigns I mentioned already, you want to focus on your challenges too. So this is why Pippin's not as good as, say, Naramiri. For instance, like this challenge requires orcs and elves, humans and goblins, light side, tanks and healers, attacker support, shadow. There's no hobbits in here. So you can use Pippin and you'll at least get him for the healer, but you can bring in Naramiri and use her for the dark relics and for that lost artifacts at the same time. And this will get you the challenge store tokens to be getting up to be working on Halbrand. So this is why I don't like using Pippin so much, and why I think Naramiri is a better early farm. It gets you on that road to progressing for Elrond, and at least it's a double dip that you can use. And that's what we're kind of focusing on for these characters. You want your campaign characters that are going to double dip on these challenge missions. So, you know, that's why humans, like your Rohan team, Strider, all humans, fantastic. Bring in Naramiri, you've got 4 humans already for Forged in the Deep. Now you've got an elf here for Dark Relics. You bring in Halbrand eventually, well, now you've got a full human team here. You've still probably got Naramiri geared up, and eventually down the road, you're going to have a full orc or full elf team anyways. This will help kind of finish things off, but in the meantime, you're going to be using your shadow team. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So, in quick summary, use your Rohan trio with Strider, Naramiri. If you've got Arwen, swap out Eothane, bring in Arwen in his place instead, and eventually push down the road, start farming Halbrand. Once Halbrand's unlocked, swap Halbrand out for Naramiri. That's going to be pretty much what you're using, and that is what I'm using in the light side campaign. I'm doing pretty good. I'm up to 5-7, and that's the team I'm using right now. So that's what I'm using for light. Let's talk about shadow. And there's 2 different shadow campaign teams. It's going to come down to whether or not you're spending. The easy choice is going to be Isengard. You get Ugluk and Mauher very early on. Ugluk has a fantastic lead for that Isengard campaign team, where you're using I am Ugluk. Anytime an Isengard member inflicts a Bane, heal all squad members for 2.5% of their max health. Fantastic. Really good sustain with this team. So you're then wondering, okay, well, who do I fill out with this? So let's just look at your shadow team. Ugluk and Mauher. Azak, if you're spending, you do buy the Isengard pack, you'll get Azak, but if you don't worry about it. You've got Dunhar. Dunhar is really good. He's basically your healer for the Isengard team. Heals here, but then everything he does applies negative effects one way or another. So you're going to get healing from him all the time. Another one that's also really good, I slept on, but people have told me is really good, and I've seen it for myself, is Morza. Early game Shadow farm, 2-5 in Shadow. He's basically another healer for your Isengard team. He brings a lot of buffs and debuffs. He'll give haste to your team, dispel boons, and inflict expose. He'll apply disrupted and dispel more boons, and then he inflicts weak-minded on his basic, which reduces the resistance of the enemy target by 50%, which means more likely for your Isengard members to apply Banes, which is going to heal you up more. So Morsa is really, really good for that. I used to use, where's my goblin here? Nuraz. I used him early on, and I kind of fell off because he's just really squishy, and while he's an early easy farm for you, there's just better options. The squishiness of him makes him a liability, especially for those 3 stars. So I kind of dropped him pretty quickly. And you know, you get those Isengard members, Ugluk, Malhur, and Dunhar, Morza. Then you have Gaz Ironhide. Now, if you're spending, you're probably gonna use Gruhur the Brute over Gaz Ironhide. I have been using the Brute over Gaz, and honestly, I love Brute. I think Brute is overall a better character than Gaz. But if you're free to play, you cannot go wrong with this character. He is a chapter 1/7 in the guild campaign. He's going to take you a little bit of time to farm up, but, you know, it's going to get you in a pretty good spot. So you may want to go farm Naramiri, get Naramiri unlocked, and come back and start farming this guy. Because you want to get your light campaign team built up first, so you can get those going, because that will get you started on the light or the shadow crystals you use to build up your shadow team. And then eventually, once you get your shadow team built up, you're going to start farming the light crystals with your shadow team. It's confusing, I know. That's just how it is. So, in my opinion, if you're free to play, Ugluk lead with Malhur, Dunhar, Gaz Ironhide, and Morza, really good spot to start off with. If you get Azak, if through the Isengard pack, can't go wrong with him either. He's really, really good. Now, if you're looking to spend, you can buy a Mordor pack, and the Mordor team also does pretty well. The issue is it's a little more volatile in that if the team works, it's great. And you can farm Shagrat through the arena store tokens. The offer only gives you half of an unlock for Shagrat, which is weird, but you can buy the arena you can buy shards for Shagrat through the arena store, like that. That will get you going on Shagrat. If you do want a whale, you can buy that Mordor team. Honestly, they both work pretty well, but you know, the Mordor is a little bit better in arena. But again, it's one of those things where that Mordor team really has to be built up to really get them going inside the campaign. And if you're free to play, that's really not your thing. But if you are whaling, yeah, you can probably get the Mordor team going, and you can also use them in arena at the same time. So overall, it's Mordor's better, but the huge amount of investment you have to build into that team to really get them going to make them work in the arena or in the Shadow campaign, not really worth it for newer players, especially if you're not spending. It's just one you don't really want to be focusing on. So my recommendation for that is going to be Isengard. And then that's going to kind of tie into where are we with arena. And what I recommend for arena is you do a mix and match of your Shadow and your light side teams. So, for instance, we can look at it here. You can see we get a mixture of Shadow and light teams. Like, this is a perfect example of it. You get, like, Rohan characters. Like, I'm not sure what's going on here. Someone forgot to put a lead back on somebody. But you can see we got Ugluk and we got Gaz for Shadow. And then we've got Eomer and Eothane and Strider. This is certainly an odd composition. You know, I see a lot of people using Eothane, and I think eventually people will realize Eothane's probably someone you should be dropping off and bringing someone else in. But yeah, you can see like Eowyn and Eothane and Strider here, and you got Ugluk and Gaz. You're using a kind of combination of them. Ugluk's very good for arena because he goes before Strider, and you can blind the enemy Strider so Strider doesn't use his AoE right away. Or you can also blind the enemy Gaz, so that if you get a bunch of buffs on your team, Gaz is not going to use his AoE and Dispel right away. So there's really good options for that. You want to kind of mix and match. And you can run a full light team. They're not as good. A full Shadow team, unless you're running Mordor, definitely not very good in arena. It's one of those things where it's kind of, you just kind of mix and match. I mean, the standard right now is an Eowyn lead with Eomer, Strider, Gaz, and like Ugluk or Halbrad. Halbrad's really, really good again. So, you know, you're going to see a lot of Halbrads in arena as well as people unlock him because his healing is just really good. But on defense, it's a bit of a liability. But really, yeah, you just want to mix and match your teams together. A full Shadow team, a full Light team in arena doesn't work. Unless you're running Mordor, there's really no good full light or shadow team that you can run right now in Arena. So that's going to kind of wrap it up here. There's really nothing else to talk about. We've talked about how you want to focus on your campaign squads and also use those for your challenges. Make sure you're farming Halbrad out of the challenge store. If you're looking to buy the Mordor team, make sure you're farming Shagrat from the arena store as well. Really nothing else to cover at this point. If you guys have questions, concerns, comments, thoughts, ideas, make sure to drop them down below. Again, if you guys have enjoyed this video, found it helpful or informative, make sure to hit that like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys next time.